The Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the dispository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them with compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary power. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murder which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of their immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the great state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Hello and welcome to this main part of the episode about Declaration of Independence. I'm your host, Tyler. I hope you liked the beginning segment there. Just decided to mess around, do a little, I think it's called a cold open. I've heard it referred to that as. And Declaration of Independence today. We're doing a little special episode. This will be a shorter episode, just myself. Kind of wanted to do a little focusing on this because I realized last year how big of a document this is, one of the founding documents. And, I had never read it before last year. Looked into it, and it was for school civics class, and I don't even know if we were required to read it, but I saw it there. Decided, hey, let me give this a read, and realized, there's a lot of stuff in here that I never heard about. You might think, we just walked away from Britain, fought Britain for independence because of a 2% tax, and we threw the tea in the water and stuff like that. But there was a lot more in there that I didn't know about. So, I wanted to get into this a little bit. You guys already heard me read the Declaration of Independence. A lot of big words in there, and I don't know if I pronounced them all right, but don't judge. They talked a lot different back then, and it's very beautiful, hard to understand though. Sounds all official, but let's get into it. Declaration of Independence was written by Thomas Jefferson, famously July 4th, 1776. Whether that is the right date, I guess, is a little bit of a controversy. It might have been July 2nd, but we recognize it as July 4th, Independence Day. First paragraph of this, we'll just kind of go through it. You guys already heard it, but I'll just break down a little bit of this. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. The first paragraph, basically, good old-fashioned entry paragraph. Why are we writing this? I mean, your English teachers would basically point to this and be like, this is a perfect intro paragraph to your essay. So they basically go in, declare, hey, this is what we want to accomplish with this document and why we're writing it. And, hey, we're going to declare the causes which impel us to separate because we're declaring independence. And I honestly really just am going to go through this second paragraph, kind of sentence by sentence, because it's full of good stuff in here. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator. So founders actually recognize a creator, not evolution. Very interesting. They maybe aren't just all deists or secular humanists. They recognize a creator. Certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So this gets important here to secure the rights that were mentioned before. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So governments are for protecting those rights, and they exist because of the consent of the governed. Very important. Whenever a government becomes destructive of these ends, right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. It's their right because governments exist because of their consent. Laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to their liking, basically, and what will affect their safety and happiness the best. We keep going. It says, let's be smart here, dictate that governments that were long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. So basically saying, let's not just go willy-nilly and change governments every 10 years because someone gets upset about something. You shouldn't just change government for little things. And it says, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer. So that goes into that a little bit. It's like, hey, if there's little things wrong, mankind, we're just going to sit back and we're going to take it a little bit. We're going to be like, okay, there's stuff wrong, but we'll deal with it. Not a big deal. We can't just get all up in arms about it. But then they go into here and say a long train of abuses and usurpations. Basically, after a lot of things go wrong, though, you got to start talking about it. If it's absolute despondency, it is the right of the people to throw off a government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been, and they're like, yeah, basically we've been putting up with a lot of stuff here. In my words, they've been putting up with a lot of stuff, and it's gotten too much. So we have to change the government, and that's what we're doing here. And they say, okay, the King of Great Britain, he is doing these repeated injuries and making all these problems that we are seeing. And then they get into all the reasons, and basically a lot of the reasons are sort of the same things, but basically the king is not dealing with laws the right way. He's forbidding his people to even do lawmaking. That's a big one. No lawmaking unless he approves, kind of deal. He's calling together meetings at places that are not easily accessible, so kind of secret, distant, uncomfortable, and it's fatiguing on them. He says he's dissolved representative houses, so a lot of taxation without representation. If you remember your history classes, big deal. People were fed up about being taxed by a nation overseas that really didn't care and really didn't care what the colonies were thinking. Let's see here. He goes on to say that the king is preventing people from immigrating to the United States, or what was the colonies, not the United States yet. Not letting people come in. He's obstructing administration of justice. He's made judges dependent on his will alone. So, hey, you can't rule anything without consulting me. Sending officers everywhere, which some of them were tax officers, but other things too. In times of peace, he had standing armies there without the consent of the colonies. Again, just no representation, no consent. And government is instituted by the consent of the people. We know that. And they stated that earlier. So that's not happening at this point in history, and at least that's what they feel. He is affected to render the military independent of laws, basically. The military can do whatever they want. He protects them with mock trials for any crimes that they commit. They're above the law, so no actual trials there. He controls the trade. The King of Britain controlled the trade at this time. You can't just go trade with France or whatever. You gotta get my permission first. Imposes taxes. There's the big one that we all know about. 2% tax on whatever. And all those tax act stuff that was going on back then. Let's see here. Depriving people of trial by jury. Transporting people overseas for pretended offenses. Keeps going. Abolishing. Again, gets into some law stuff there. Let's see here. Suspending our own legislatures, our own governing bodies, the elected officials, and declaring himself invested with power to legislate over the colonies. He's waged war against them, plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burnt our towns, destroyed the lives of our people. That's a big one there. He's at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, German mercenaries mostly. Here's a big one, already begun with circumstances of cruelty, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. So they call Britain a civilized nation, but they're saying, hey, your king's not acting like the head of a civilization. Civilized nation should act. He's taking sailors captive on the high seas and making them work for Britain and also fight American sailors and having them become the executioners of their friends and brethren or to fall themselves by their hands. That's really tough. You're fighting your brothers, your friends, your neighbors, your countrymen. And the British had incited domestic insurrections amongst the colonies and had kind of stirred up the Native American Indian population, and they were waging war against the colonies in certain parts. And they kind of go on to say then in the next paragraph, those were all the reasons. So we got into a lot of stuff there. I mean, a lot more than just taxes, I'll tell you that. They had plenty of reasons, and that was kind of their opening statement, as you remember. Intro paragraph, hey, listen, we have to explain why we're doing this. They explain it with, I don't even know how many reasons this is, but I have 2 pages of reasons, basically, here. And then they get in, and they're like, hey, we've petitioned for redress, basically, hey, we've asked, please stop. We don't like it. It's not okay. And they're like, if a ruler of a free people is acting like a tyrant, he should not be fit to rule a free people. And they also appeal to the British people in general. So they're talking kind of about the king, written sort of to the king / the British government. But then they're like, hey, we've talked to our British brethren here. We've warned them about what their country's doing. We've appealed to their native justice, kind of. They're like, hey, we're your brothers. We have common kindred here. And they're like, hey, the British people have been deaf to the voice of justice. And they're like, and then it's just necessary, since you guys have been deaf to our pleas, that we're going to hold the British people, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and in peace friends. So they're like, hey, when the war's over, we ain't gonna hate you. Like, war is war. And they had some kind of moral standard there where they're like, we can get past war, which is very interesting, and be friends in peace and enemies in war. So that's an interesting thing. And I'm like, hey, we just kind of hate you guys for what you're doing, and we're just always going to hate you, or no matter what. It's not that. It's saying, hey, when there's peace, we will be friends once again. But right now, it's war. So then, last paragraph here gets into basically, hey, we are the representatives of the United States of America, and we appeal to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. And that basically means we appeal to God to judge if our reasons that we stated earlier are reasons that are worthy of throwing off this government. And they're basically saying, hey, God, listen, you can judge us. You can figure it out. We give this to you. And, yeah, you're the judge. And then publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. That they're able to do basically everything that an independent state would be able to do. That they're free from the British Crown and the state of Great Britain. And it says, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, meaning God, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's it. So these guys, all the people that signed the Declaration of Independence, forget exactly what the number was there. But, they band together. They say, hey, this is kind of it. I think the famous line, if we do not all hang together, we will all hang separately, or whatever. I forget who said that, but that was kind of a great quote. But, yeah, I found it interesting reading this that I think God is mentioned 4 times. And people like to argue that everyone was just kind of, that there wasn't Christianity, it wasn't founded on anything Christian or anything. Okay, but why are they mentioning God? If they're just atheist, agnostic, whatever. Why bring God up into this? Why appeal to the supreme judge and say, hey, God, if this isn't justified, then you be the judge, make us lose. You're the supreme judge. You know what's up. So yeah, I think that was very interesting. Never knew that there was that many reasons for splitting with England, and I just have tremendous respect for our founders. They took a lot of time to come up with all these reasons, think this through, and like they said, they don't recommend governments changing for small reasons. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. My voice is a little bit shot, but I wanted to sneak this one in because it's been a long time since I've gotten an episode out. But yeah, go read founding documents. We are in the 250th anniversary of America, 250 years since these documents were forged, and the world has never been the same since. So thanks for listening or watching, guys. I encourage you to go watch on YouTube if you are listening. Put in some effort on that first segment there, the cold open. Did a little designing, little picture montage and whatnot. So that was kind of fun to mess around with. But we'll see how many more episodes we get out. Probably not a whole lot. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you've realized after this episode how important the Declaration of Independence is. And you probably didn't know half the stuff that was in there. But yeah, I hope that was informative to you guys. So thanks for listening or watching, and we'll see you in the next one.